Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I already did this video once today. It was 40 minutes long, the first part of this video, 35 minutes long. And I forgot to turn on the microphone, which happens, but very seldom do I make the whole video. Like I'll recognize the mic's not on 5 minutes in or whatever. But I was a little bit, tired this morning. I feel better now, so maybe this will be a better version of what I was saying earlier that I now have to say again. So this video is a comparison between the Britney Spears phenomenon, the Marilyn Monroe iconic blonde, the ditzy blonde, the sex kitten, MK Ultra type of, archetype. There's always this archetype existing in the American culture, and the decline and inevitable collapse of America, right? The collapse of Britney. Britney cannot be freed or saved, and how that is a microcosm of the collapse of America. So to start off with, Britney Spears goes topless on Instagram in latest bold move. Britney Spears frees the nipple in racy Instagram photo from page 6. Snooki got in the action. Gimme, gimme, gimme more with 3 E's. And then some other people. Okay, you are free, baby. And so Britney posted a couple of topless photos on Instagram with her hands covering, I don't know. Even though Britney has done her fair share of damage, there she is, as some sort of a warrior princess, cartoon style. Even though Britney has done her fair share of damage, she has a special place in the hearts and minds of many people in the truth community and Republican right-wing people, because she represents a certain type of icon, a certain type of celebrity figure that is, country music is involved, and just there's this blonde, ditzy, tragic, depressed figure that's viewed as a victim and gets a lot of sympathy, even though she is, again, influenced young people because she was a child star. And I've talked about this with her and Miley Cyrus, where they start off as a child star and then get more and more racy and, inappropriate. And they bring a whole generation with them of young kids who identify with a pop star. There she is with she got rid of her tattoo. She photoshopped out her tattoo. And you can see this with Lil Nas X right now. Came in with that cheesy song. He called it a gimmick. He had, he said in a rap line that he started off with a gimmick. He admits it. And now he's degrading his young audience. He went after a child fan base, young people. Britney Spears has done that, and then she's gone down sort of a degraded path, became more racy, more, inappropriate in different ways. And now she's just some old, mom who is a la Madam Expiration Date, trying to reclaim her youth and her sanity and control over her life. And one of the things that, she has this very childlike voice, which is typical for this archetype, this, blonde bombshell, ditzy blonde bombshell, this tragic figure. And I'm going to cover more of them, Marilyn Monroe and some of the other ones. And so she, has this childlike voice.
I'm here to answer all of your questions, and the first main question that you guys have been asking me is basically, when I'm in my living room, do I get dizzy when I'm spinning so much?
So this was, a while back when Free Britney people were wanting her to address real issues, which she kind of is now, the real tragic nature of her situation. And she's got a very childlike voice, but she's also talking fast, right? She's, talking with a lot of nervousness and speed in her speech.
Yes, I get extremely dizzy. I'm a dancer, so as long as I have a focus point for my head, as I turn, as long as I keep finding that spot, usually in the end it's not as...
She gives some, some 666 symbol here. But she is, she's talking like she is like a nervous rabbit, right? And she's been in front of the camera, in front of large audience, and yet there's this nervousness here.
Is this your Easter outfit today?
Yes, this is my Easter suit today.
It's nice for church, right? It's her Easter suit today. But as you can see, she's documenting her mental decline on Instagram. Of course, she's on antipsychotic medication. There's the tattoo with the Hebrew lettering that she is so proud of, that she erased in a future Instagram post. And, she's somebody who is, the weird dancing, the psychotic breakdowns, the baby talk, the depression, and the conservatorship, right? Somebody who just looks lost and confused. People have an affect, right? If you do psychological assessments like I used to have to do, you have to observe people, and then in the heartfulness meditation, preceptors, trainers learn to read people's spiritual condition, their internal world, but you get a sense of a person, and you can look at a person and see there's, just they're emanating a condition. Sometimes it's anger or hatred or fear or, most people it's lost. Most people, they just have this dazed look. This is her Easter outfit one. They have this dazed look on their face and cluelessness. They're not conscious. You try to talk to them about something serious and they flip out, right? And they put up this wall between you. You might have this experience with some of your friends and relatives. You try to talk to them about some sort of truther thing. Here she goes. She's going like full cougar here, or leopard. And you try to talk to them about some truther thing, and there's this wall. They just don't want to hear it, right? They have this, they put up this blockade, so whatever you're saying to them, the butterfly stuff here, stay weird, with butterflies with a color stamped out. And so Britney is, the epitome of this iconic blonde bombshell, ditzy blonde, that's depressed and sad, mentally ill, and has a tragic end. Now, America has always been in love. Hollywood's been in love with this archetype. It was before Marilyn Monroe, but Marilyn Monroe's the most famous one.
Marilyn, I was asking Milton what you thought of that look cover that he did.
You see that just lack of consciousness.
Of you.
I liked it very much, although I like most of Milton's pictures.
Uh-huh. Well, now, you're...
Very childlike and sleepy, right? Almost like a sleep-like state. Very innocent. I mean, the whole idea of a Playboy bunny, somebody who's, again, isn't conscious or aware of what's going on around them. This lost look, right? And, innocent and helpless, often seen as a victim consciousness, right? And there is tragedy, depression, tragedy, self-abuse, suicide, these sort of flip outs you see them have, right? Meltdowns, some sort of psychological schism. And she is, just this lost look. And they've pushed this icon, someone masked her up here. They pushed this icon, the blonde bombshell icon, has been around for, as long as I can remember. As long as there's been a Hollywood, there's been this blonde icon. They also have an association with Playboy magazine.
And I wonder what it feels like to belong to the public.
My goodness, I guess I feel the same way as the Tower of London feels.
Do you find it at all disagreeable?
This is Jane Mansfield. These women died before I was born or died when I was young. This is from 1960. I was born in 1964. But this is, she was a playmate and also, following the footsteps of Marilyn Monroe.
Actually, I feel that a star owes it to her public to bring the public into her life. They
just this lost affect, this, sleepy type of, almost like drugged, right? Some sort of being in some sort of hypnotic stupor. Jane Mansfield was, again, in the vein of Marilyn Monroe. She kind of filled the void left when Marilyn Monroe died. They died in tragic deaths. And then Jane Mansfield died as well in a car accident, in air quotes, right? Similar to so many of these so-called starlets. And, you know, they just have this tragic victim depressed affect that's going to end poorly. You know, and there's this sort of underbelly of Hollywood. Here's Jane Mansfield with Anton LaVey, who ran the Church of Satan. And she was associated with this guy, right? This evil-looking devil-wearing MNFer, right? And so this sort of MK Ultra sacrifice type of a situation that these starlets are involved in, right? It's holding a skull here. And so that's, you know, a part of this, the underbelly of Hollywood, the stuff that they don't, you know, talk about. And, you know, this was satanic presence in Hollywood, and these starlets were associated with that, many of them. Of course, there was Princess Diana, who also had this depressed, you know, this depressed affect. She was somebody who was, you know, in a marriage where her husband was in love with another woman. She was having, you know, she was a eating disorder and depression and on psychological medication. She was one of the most popular royal family members in history, had a big following in America, but she also had this sad affect. She was sort of ditzy and had that, you know, that way of talking, a dreamy, like, you know, they're in a dreamlike state. They're not fully awake, right? Somebody who's not fully conscious, that creepy MNFer there, right, is you know, he fixed Dracula's castle because Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, was one of their distant relative ancestors. And so he went and saved Dracula's castle. But Diana's another one of these tragic figures, iconic, a worldwide figure, who embraced this role of the ditzy, sort of depressed, sleepy, blonde bombshell. Then, of course, there was Anna Nicole Smith. They often have these sort of meltdowns, right? She was somebody who had one of these meltdowns, right?
She thinks she have. Is this a mushroom trip? Is this?
You know, where there's an alternate personality, a child type of personality emerges, and they have these meltdowns, and her handler is videotaping her and humiliating her here. And this could have been dealt with privately, right? Why would this be out in the public? It's happening at her home. She's, you know, acting like a little girl. She's having this age regression. This is very common with sexual abuse and things like this. Here she is with Regis and Kathy Lee.
What a year you've had.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like a guest shirt to me.
Yeah, jeans and all.
Well,
Although Marilyn Monroe has been an idol of yours all your life, right? You're
Definitely.
Yeah.
I love her.
Marilyn Monroe, right? Wanting to be a Marilyn Monroe, this tragic, you know, she had a tragic end. So many of these playmates, these iconic Playboy models, end up dying in some sort of tragic way. One of them was, you know, I talked about this in an earlier video. She called Hugh Hefner the devil, and in MK mind control stuff, the devil is the handler, and she painted in red paint around her apartment where she was found dead. There was an inverted pentagram and things like that, right? And this, you know, tragic end to these women's lives, right? These, you know, adult girl-like women, you can see that they're doomed, right? They're lost. They're not, you know, able to mature into women and have productive lives and become mothers and, you know, become serious people in some way. They're just lost in this, like, drug-like stupor. Here's Britney Spears having one of her meltdowns.
Is that one of your biggest wishes?
She did this with Diane Sawyer as well. Here she is with Matt Lauer.
Yeah. It's okay. I would like for them to leave me alone.
She's talking about the paparazzi, right? And of course, Matt Lauer, he's dressed here like Pamela Anderson. He had his own blonde bombshell moment, right? Bracing this archetype. We know how things worked out for Matt. So then there was these other women that embraced this role. Farrah Fawcett, this iconic picture of her. She was on that show Charlie's Angels when I was a kid. She was somebody who also had this ditzy affect, right? Nothing serious, often shilling for the beast. You see this with like country singers, Dolly Parton being the big one, where they seem to identify and be connected to the people, but they often are used to push an agenda in a ditzy way. And they have, again, depression and mental illness, lots of issues. This is Suzanne Summers, again, the association with Playboy. She was this iconic star for a number of years when she was on Three's Company, playing this ditzy role. I mean, this Three's Company show was a horrible show, and she was like, a really low IQ'd person, a character, really stupid, saying all these sort of ditzy things. She was more of a person that managed her success, right? Where she became, now she does like infomercials and stuff, but she was somebody who would embrace this role, right? That was given this, there always has to be this blonde icon. Of course, Madonna embraced this role in a different way. She was in that, that Marilyn Monroe knockoff, and she became this sort of blonde icon for a while. Ditzy, but then she became a feminist. She has her own mental health issues, though. And she embraced the Marilyn Monroe comparison and archetype. She was this iconic star. And then there was this sort of epic performance at MTV where she raises Britney Spears up from her knees, who's worshiping Madonna. Madonna dressed in black, like she's gone to the dark side, right? And then Britney Spears is still innocent, and Christina Aguilera, who also embraced this sort of blonde bombshell role as well. She raises her up and gives her a kiss, like passing on her demonic energy, right? Her, demon into Britney. And then Justin Timberlake looking on, and then she kisses Christina Aguilera. They kind of, crapped all over Christina Aguilera's moment, but her passing on this, archetype and the tragedy and the depression and all the things that go with it. Madonna sort of evolved into being like a handler, like an Ellen or a Jimmy Kimmel's or somebody, where she became more of a gatekeeper. She went from being this sort of sex symbol in her early parts of her career to being, one of the, higher ups in this sort of, hierarchy. Of course, there was Lady Gaga, who embraced this blonde, iconic role. She had her own mental health issues, and, sometimes they recover from this and they're able to get another role, but often they don't, right? Often they suffer some sort of tragic end. But she's, her and Madonna are sort of a different version of this. You now see this with Billie Eilish, who is got that sleepy, just this low consciousness, looks like they're stoned, this affect, you could just see it, like this sleepiness, the not, being aware of their surroundings, right? And she is, a new generation of this for kids who are self-abusive and lost and depressed. This almost sort of like, this drugged out stupor that they're in, self-abusive and suicidal ideation and the rest of it. And so this is an iconic figure. And there's many young women who are influenced by this example of womanhood. And there's, it's embraced more or less by Americans. These blonde women get a lot more love than some of the other celebrities I talked about. Britney, a lot of people in the truth community and Republicans have a, soft spot for Britney because she's viewed as a victim and she's like an all-American girl. And there's this, this association with that, right? And so there's all these famous blonde women who have died. Of course, Brittany Murphy is another one. I've talked about Marilyn Monroe, is that Grace Kelly. These women who have died tragic deaths, and many of them associated with Playboy. These women who are sort of lost and confused, and then they end up having these tragic deaths. And it is, a part of American Hollywood culture, right? And, they're doomed from the beginning. They're sort of this, the four non-blondes, like this anti-blonde Hollywood culture now as well, like a subculture of this, this Hollywood pushing of this childlike, depressed, and in a daze, stoned, iconic women. A lot of modern day blonde bombshells. This is something you see a lot on social media. It's still this icon. Often you'll see with depressed and someone telling you to be quiet, right? This affect, depressed affect, just this, a blonde bombshell mask. And there's always some woman that's embracing this role, this iconic role, right? Paris Hilton, she talked about how she was told to act stupid on purpose on her reality TV show. And there's a lot of, oftentimes these women have some sort of an abusive history, and they talk about being abused, and there's an association with childhood. Like there's lots of white people who have lighter hair, like when they're younger, right? They're, towheads, they have, blonde hair when they're younger, and then their hair gets darker as they get older. So it's an association with being a child, and they often act childish. Another aspect of this is that they shave their heads. Often shave their heads and to dye them blonde, right? And this is, usually associated with some sort of humiliation ritual. These celebrities who have shaved heads, and, especially women, they shave their heads, and then there's some sort of, breakdown associated with it. Of course, Britney broke down and smashed that car's window, and her shaving of her head was the beginning of them getting her into a conservatorship. And so this is a celebrity, this is something that we see more and more celebrities doing, and it's been well documented, them doing this. There's also association with rehabilitation. Remember, Kanye went in to get reprogrammed. He had that mental breakdown, and they handcuffed him to an ambulance, and then he came out with blonde hair. They did the same thing to Justin Bieber. Beyonce's another one of these iconic blonde bombshells, very ditzy, not a lot of intelligence when she's talking. She seems to be in a daze.
You do that? Is that a sign for your name or something? What is that?
That's the Rockefeller sign.
Oh.
Yeah, it looks a lot like an Illuminati pyramid.
Look at me. I'm so...
It's okay.
Oh, my God. I'm, so not hip right now. What's
Yeah, she doesn't know what it is.
that, Beyonce? What is that? I'm sorry. Jay-Z,
okay.
I'm sorry. Yo, what's up, Jay?
He's going to be happy to see you throwing it up. That's nice.
She's going to be happy you see it throwing up the pyramid, right? Just this daze, this, ditzy sort of affect, low energy, usually, right? Depressed, not a lot of exuding, a lot of life force, a lot of energy. Just sort of this dream-like, sleep-like state. So this was the Global Citizen Festival, and she's up there with Eddie Vedder singing Redemption Song. Redemption Song. The redemption song, right? You have to redeem yourself. And I talk about redemption here because of the heartfulness meditation and, the direction we've gone in an egotistical way. But when they do it, it's this, global programming that benefits the wealthy in a, sort of a resetting the economic system and your privileges, things that they promised you, and now they have to rescind, and somehow it's your fault, and you should beg the world and God for your redemption because you followed this, demonic economic system, materialism and all the rest of it, right? But you're the ones that have to pay the price and sing the redemption song. Emancipate yourself mental slavery, no! From your mental slavery. It's this, fake woke culture that doesn't really get to the heart of the problem. And they often use these blonde bombshells to sell the agenda. They've been doing this lately with Dolly Parton, for example, in Tennessee. It's specific to their fan base, and they are there to push this agenda. So I'm going to get back to this. I have a few more things to cover, and so I want to go through them, but I want to come back to this and use it for the metaphor of the collapsing American system and how, what Britney is going through publicly is something that America is going through in an unacknowledged way.
One by one. Let's fight like demons.
Yeah, let's fight like demons. They fight like demons, and this is from the Dune trailer. Kanye West listening party menu goes viral for $40 hot dogs. So this is Kanye. He's got the mask. Guy's wearing red, right? He's wearing, red. Britney's been talking about red. I've talked about the color red and what it symbolizes so much. And here he is. He had a listening party, sold out a stadium, the Atlanta Stadium. And the fans were there just to listen to his new album and have him dance around and, act out some of the songs and things in the middle of the stadium. And a bonus, they got to pay $40 for all beef kosher hot dogs, $45 for cookies and brownies, salty kettle corn for $35, chicken tenders $50, and assorted snack basket for $65. He's done that before. He had a church service and he promised breakfast. It was like $50 a head, and they got like an apple and toast. It's like, do you, Kanye? And so this is also interesting. Tucker Carlson's unmasking claim confirmed by NSA investigators. And so what unmasking is, if you remember from Edward Snowden, is that they collect everything. The NSA collects everything they can on everybody. They have these massive databases and algorithms, and they collect all information, but they don't look at the information. What they say is we're collecting everything, but it's private. But if we need to, we can unmask a person for, whatever reason. So unmasking means they take it out of the database and bring it into conscious investigation. And so they did that to Tucker Carlson, who's an American citizen and a so-called journalist, right? And they didn't say why they did it to him, but he said things that people are getting upset about, even though Tucker Carlson is, a part of Fox News and the mainstream media. He's gone a little bit truther, and they have, singled him out. And you'd think that this might be a report because Tucker Carlson was hammered and called paranoid by many of these mainstream news media stations. You think that they might want to cover this as well, but instead of covering this, that the NSA was spying on an American journalist, right, unmasking them, which is, a breach of their mandate to collect all data on social media and everywhere else. I've talked about this. It's one of the reasons that the truth community has been allowed to exist, is because they are putting people into categories and folders as troublemakers or potential troublemakers, and they have all this data. And don't be surprised if someday you're sitting outside of a FEMA camp and somebody pulls up a tablet and starts asking you about controversial social media posts. That's why I always say, remember that this isn't, it seems safe and benign now, but everything you say can be used against you on social media in some future dystopian date. But so the mainstream media, instead of covering this, right, this bombshell story, they covered this instead. Tucker Carlson confronted at Montana fishing shop, called the worst human being. And then Yahoo, that's MSNBC and Yahoo, Montana man shout down Tucker Carlson in video from flying fish store. So if you Google Tucker Carlson, you see that news about Montana is the first thing that comes up, right? This man that confronted him. So that's what the mainstream media is covering here. And this is the...
Don't even get I don't care, man. Okay, just you are the worst human being known to mankind.
He's the worst human being known to man. He looks fake, right? They're videotaping this, or they're videoing this for Instagool. This guy, right, putting it up on Instagool, want to have his either famous moment or some sort of staged shill type thing. I don't know if Tucker's is in on it or not.
I want you to know that we've been going to this
He's the worst human being, and he wants him to know. In the world, he's the worst human being.
United States to everything else in this world. I don't care that your daughter's here. What you've done to people's families, what you have done to...
What you've done to families, right? So anybody talking any sort of truth or narrative is a horrible human being and is doing bad things to families.
Everybody else in this system, son.
This is how you identify your fish. You know, of course, Kanye's got a house in Montana. Many of these celebrities have places in Montana because they're anticipating the collapse, right? Montana is considered one of these safe states and a good place to live because of the mountains when shit gets real, right? So this is also interesting. U.S. men's basketball stunned by Fournier, France in opener. And so the NBC network, which covers the Olympics, and they're getting hammered because nobody's watching. And they have, you know, their streaming service, their Peacock streaming service. Everybody has a streaming service. And they got their premium Peacock package. And they decided to put the basketball games on, the U.S. men's basketball games, on this high-end streaming service so people would register for it. People would sign up for it, you know, because that's capitalism. But the American basketball team sucks because, I mean, there's lots of reasons for it. The rest of the world has now many NBA players, and their players are much more patriotic and have much more enthusiasm for representing their country than American athletes who are, you know, having their woke moments or whatever it is. And so America lost 2 games in the lead up to the Olympics in some of their sort of preseason games. And then they lost to France the other day. And so now people are complaining. I found this article, I don't have it up, but there's all these wonderful tweets about people pissed off because they signed up for Peacock Premium to watch America get embarrassed in a sport they used to dominate, right? I mean, it's another way that you have to pay for your privilege to watch America fail. And so I saw this, and this is also interesting in terms of the mental illness associated with Hollywood celebrities and children's stars. Bronson Pitchot recalls being kicked out of a restaurant with Carrie Fisher, and he talked about how she warned him and said they were on some sort of a date, allegedly, and she warned him and said, you remember this guy, Balky or whatever? He was popular in the 80s and 90s. That she said that she had manic depression, and he said she made an art form out of saying difficult things brilliantly. When she said it wasn't blunt. It was devil may care and adorable. She said to me, Bronson, don't fall in love with me. Don't even think about it. And then she said, because I'm manic depressive and I don't do things like this, which meant fall in love. She had a bipolar disorder. I was 26 and Princess Leia was pulling her dress over her head in a fancy restaurant. I guess that's why they got kicked out. She really meant, you don't want to have a crush on me or anything deeper because I'm out there. She was telling me the God's most unvarnished truth. And then they linked to this article where Billie Lourd, her daughter, says Carrie Fisher died of drugs and mental illness. Of course, her ashes were, of course, after she was cremated, they put her ashes in a giant plastic Prozac capsule that she had because she was, you know, she loved her Prozac. And so this is another indication of, you know, a Hollywood celebrity, someone who was iconic, dying of tragic death of mental illness and psychological medication and things like this. So this is, I saw this meme yesterday, and this is where this whole video came from. How close humanity is to understanding that their governments are organized criminals. And then what, right? Okay, what happens after that? You see, this is so 15 years ago, right? This is back when there was this idea, when the truth community first started to gain hold and ground on the internet. Like I said, the history of this thing is there was a small percentage of people, many of them ex-military, some of them fought in the Vietnam War, like my brother. And, even before that, there's always some fringe group of people that don't agree with the mainstream system, and they find the dirt, right? They find, the things that the mainstream system doesn't want you to know. And I'm talking about this can go on at any period of time in history, that there's the official story, there is the brand, there's the presentation, and then there's the dark side behind it. In every government and every organization, there's this stuff that people don't want to talk about, every family, right? There's the ideal, what people want to believe about their country or family or state or institution, whatever it might be. And then there's the part that people don't want to think about or acknowledge or change, right? Just wishing it would go away and some of the negative history or whatever. And so that exists throughout time. But here in America, there was always this small group of so-called conspiracy theorists that in the 50s and 60s existed on, AM radio or shortwave radio or through, underground newsletters and pamphlets, some revolutionary type of people. And they existed in the shadows. But then the big event happened in 2001, and then there was the onset of YouTube and the internet and Facebook, where people could express their beliefs to a global audience, at least a national audience, but also in many cases a global audience. And so people who had this kind of knowledge now were able to share it without FCC regulations and oversight, a boss or handler. They could just speak their mind, and this truth movement took root, right? And the truth movement came to be. And so the idea was 10 or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, I guess, to some extent, probably more like 18 years ago, they developed this idea that if enough people woke up to the reality that the people that control our system aren't the heroes and benevolent figures and good leaders that the branding and official stories say they are. That was the idea behind InfoWars, right? Alex Jones became a prominent shill, a controlled opposition figure, pushing out this idea in a very aggressive, getting on the, megaphone kind of way, right? And there was all these fear-based truther channels that followed Alex Jones' model of behavior. And there was this underlying idea that when enough people got access to this information, then there would be a grand awakening and the bad guys would be thrown out and America would turn into some sort of utopia, even at a global level. There would be good leadership and good business practices, and the world would, somehow be a better place, right? Because people just needed to find out that their politicians and leaders were crooked, selfish people, and that would be enough for them to overturn the system. But that didn't happen. Many people were close to these ideas. Many people are, not only close to them, but they're pretty aggressively trying to shut these ideas down. I'm talking about normal folk, right? And the truth community just delved into extremism and mental illness and, just making up stuff, disinformation, and split up among a couple of different pathways where all the energy seemed to go. Either the QBs, the right-wing sort of extremists that came in and pushed their dysfunctional agenda, and then the left woke movement that was pushing a hyper-liberal agenda, neither one of them identifying the real problem, neither one of them thinking that they had to change themselves, that, all of us had to change. It wasn't just the so-called controllers, the people I call the controllers, what other people call the elite. It wasn't just the laws and the politicians and society and the corporations that had to change, but it was all of us had to change. We were all a part of the problem, and nobody wants to hear that. So the idea of waking up to the reality of your leadership is not nearly enough. It's just a catalyst for something else, a catalyst for some other action, and that action whatever actions that have been taken have been dysfunctional. There's some people that get riled up and protest without any, thought of how that's going to affect the situation. It always makes it worse. Once you start protesting, your group gets more oppressed, and then there's forced silence, and you become, a threat to society, and everybody turns on you. And they get crazy people, or people volunteer to be crazy and act crazy like Alex Jones. And then there's this, profile of everybody who is now in this movement, and that screws all of us. So that failed, right? That made things worse. I mean, it's still making things bad and worse. The crazies doing crazy things. That only results in more oppression and more censorship and all these other bad things. And there's a couple of other big reasons, which I haven't talked about before. I don't think I have. Why just waking people up or people waking up themselves isn't enough. It's just, it can help you personally. It can help you change your trajectory, right, your path. But it really doesn't do so much for society, at least in the short term. But you can change. You can, it can help affect you in a positive way. But in terms of society and the system, it does very little. The first piece is that most people are overwhelmed. Most people are just maxed out. They can't take anything more. They're completely assed out, right? They have nothing. They're bankrupt inside in terms of their internal energy. Their love bank is drained. Just getting through their lives is more than enough. And they don't have any energy to put into changing things, especially if it means they have to change and, they have to give up some of their perks and privileges, which they depend on because they just don't feel like they can do anymore. Maybe they have some inner strength that hasn't been tapped into. Certainly they do, but is that something that can be accessed? In most cases, not. And so they're just, punching the clock and they got nothing for nobody, right? They can't, a realization that the government's evil, or whatever it is, doesn't do anything for them and they can't offer anything. So even if they wake up to it, most of them are in a daze and, going back to this stuff like with Britney, right? Britney and her dad. I mean, you have the Free Britney Army. It's the same thing. They've woken up to the idea that Britney's dad is a bad guy, but they didn't, wake up to that when she was a little kid when something could have been done differently. If somebody had, intervened, she wouldn't have been the megastar that she is. She wouldn't be a Disney kid, but she might have a normal life, right? But her parents pimped her out there like so many of these, parents that want their kids to be Hollywood celebrities and, music stars or whatever they are. And they, push these kids into this field of depravity, and the kids fracture mentally. And maybe there's, more ritualistic things and whatever goes on behind the scenes. Who knows, the Disney stuff and the rest of it. And so the time to help Britney and free Britney was when she was a little kid, but it was her parents. And chances are anybody being able to do anything for her or any of these kids is fairly slim. And so now you can't go back and put the horse in the barn or whatever the saying is, right? It's too late, right? Britney's already messed up. And you can free her from her father, but you're never going to free her from the damage her father and the Hollywood culture did. And she has a fractured mental capacity. And this is, a metaphor for America, right? America is like Britney. It's been exploited and, our culture is, everything's, people are broken. And, the whole culture has gone in a way that people are addicted to things that are bad for them and are weak and entitled and, mentally ill and broken and all these things that I've talked about. And so, you can't go back and fix people in this way, right? Give people better character qualities, replenish their love bank. At least in terms of the American system, the heartfulness system does this. In terms of spiritual love, can re-enthuse people on a spiritual path. But in terms of the American system, people are just, completely wiped out, bankrupt, and broken, a la Britney. And so there's nothing you can do with America, just like you can't free America and you can't save America, just like you can't save Britney and free America, right? People are, wiped out. That's the first reason. And the second reason, like Britney, people are addicted to the beast, right? Britney wants her fame. Britney wants her money, right? She wants the things she got from being broken and being a part of this celebrity culture. But she, can't remove the damage that's been done. And that's everybody, because we're all embedded in the system. We're all 100% or 80% or whatever dependent on the system, unless you're farming and doing some self-sufficient things. But we're all dependent on the system more than we would like to acknowledge, right? And so for the majority of people, if it's a choice between taking down the evil government, but also losing your lifestyle, losing, the things the system does for you, and having not as good material life, most people just want to turn a blind eye to that. Most people just want to, hope that Joe Biden is a good guy and he's a good president. They were all right. Maybe they were convinced Trump wasn't, or maybe they thought Trump was the reincarnation of Jesus. In either case, most people are just hoping things get better because they're worried about their lifestyles, right? And so people don't want to get rid of the evil leadership if it means that they're going to suffer materially, and they're going to suffer lifestyle-wise, because the system provides us with the lifestyle we have. And so this, meme that says humanity is really close to realizing their leaderships are criminals, well, for all these countries that are exploited by Western countries, by the valuation of their currency, right? Where the dollar and European currencies are valued so much higher than their currencies, and they're exporting their resources, and they have puppet leadership put in by the UN or the United States or one of these other governments, right? And so if those people wake up, they're going to look at America and American citizens who are eating their food and using up their resources as the, bad guys or whatever it is. And so if they wake up and they say, we want our own resources, and they overthrow their governments, right? These really poor people in these poor countries that are, living off of pennies, half the people are living on $2 a day or less, all those people, then they're going to cause an economic collapse, right? Where the disparity in wealth and the wealth gap and the resources that are in your Walmarts or in your, Costco or whatever it is, are going to disappear, and you're going to have to survive on your, your local products and things. And we're mostly a service industry. We don't do much in terms of making things. We're not industrialized so much anymore. And so that would throw off that would throw the economy over the cliff. And so if those people woke up and they did something about it, right, that would create a global collapse of the economic system and all the rest of it. And so once you wake up to that your system is evil and the people controlling it is evil, the debt-based economy, then you realize it's had an effect on you, that it's tainted you. It's made you into a slaves of your wishes, right? In the Heartfulness meditation prayer, we are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement, a slave to your desires, a slave to your entitlements and your privileges and all these things. I mean, it's all of us. And so when we realize that, then it's like, wow, how much do I have to change? What do I have to give up? What do I have to do differently? And then it comes back to point number one, where people are all drained, assed out, right, completely bankrupt and don't have enough energy just to keep on going in their drab routine to even think about changing their lives in some epic way with no real support system, because you need some sort of support system. And they've successfully demolished the village and the tribe and the families and the local communities where people don't even know their neighbors, right? And so there isn't any way to create a supportive community. I've been around these sort of communities. My family and I bought our first cows years ago from an intentional community, and I talked to the members, and one guy said, they had 100 people in this one place, Twin Oaks. Is it Twin Oaks? Whatever. And they were like, the guy was like, it's like being married to 100 other people, 99 other people. They always had 100 people there. And it's very hard for people to live in the old way, to live in a tribal way, to live in a village-based community, or even a family. The family has been decimated, and people just don't even get along in a family-type situation. I mean, some people can pull it off, but the majority can't. And then you have to come up with the resources to buy the land and buy the equipment, and all these sorts of things, right? So it's a big leap for most people, right? It's a big jump, and most people just don't have the energy and the enthusiasm to do anything about it. But that comes to the third point that's also about Britney and her dad. Britney's dad has had overwhelming power in her life, and now he's a forced legal guardian based in her psychological situation, right? And this is how it is for most people. They wake up to their, being in a bad marriage, and they have a bad husband, but he's controls the wife's resources, right? So a woman wakes up and finds out that her husband's a mafia boss, and she wants a divorce, and he's like, you're not getting the kids, you're not getting anything, right? And he's going to, do whatever bad thing to her, right? Cement shoes or something or whatever it is, right? Waking up to being in a criminal family, and then you try to leave the criminal family, and they strip you of all your resources, or even worse, or whatever it is, that you don't even have a way out of it because it's a dysfunctional relationship. Or it's like, you wake up and you figure out your drug dealer is a bad person, but you're addicted to the drugs that they're selling you. And so they're exploiting you. They have so much more power in the relationship because they control your addictions. Same thing with Britney and her dad, right? And so this is like, again, a microcosm of everybody's situation, that we're 100% dependent on a system that's run by negative people. It's a negative system, demonic system, and yet we don't have an alternative. And so waking up to that fact just sort of makes it more, difficult, right? And then number 4 is all the disinformation and crazy theories and imaginations or purposeful disinformation that's out there. We see it time and time again here. I see it all the time. And so people don't even, get the real truth. A lot of emotions, people being emotional, people focused on, other people being demonic, but don't look at themselves, aren't willing to change themselves, which is a big one. And then people not wanting to deepen their connection to God. Most people being afraid to connect to God or sit in front of God or face God. They stick to a religion that's also has been compromised, right? The religion has also been infiltrated and warped in a way to control you. And so, it's the whole system. There's no alternative right now. And so, what's the plan? All right, you realize that your system is run by criminals, like this meme says. Okay, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to make this actionable? What's your plan to remedy this situation? Voting isn't going to make a difference, right? Voting's controlled. The candidates you get to choose from is controlled. And even if you elected good people, they would be bought and sold and threatened to knuckle under to the beast, right? And so voting doesn't work. Protests make things worse, right? What are you going to do and still keep the integrity of the economy and the lifestyle, which nobody wants to get rid of? I've said this over and over again, that they've tied themselves to the system, the controllers, and so their demise is the collapse of the system. It's tied to the collapse of the system. And so the other piece to this is the system, which is so obviously weak and flawed, is only held together by perception. Because if people really knew the value of their currency and the insolvent nature of their banks and governments and, everything in the economy, everything's insolvent, right? That means that the debts outweigh the assets in such a way that you can never catch up. You can never catch up with the national debt. Many people can't catch up with their personal debt. Many rich people and many corporations, even though the corporations are trading at a high level, they're actually operating in the red. They are, their expenses outweigh the money they're making. It's just the perception of their value, right? Many of these big tech industries, companies and things. And so the insolvent nature of our businesses and currencies and banks and our governments and things would freak people out. And they would run to the bank and stock up on food or whatever they would do, right? Flip out. And that would cause a complete breakdown of civilization and the economy. And so it's perception that's keeping things going. It's delusion and not acknowledging reality. So waking up and getting people away from their delusions would only bring down the system. And so the system, this idea that people are close to waking up to the true nature of their leadership, well, if that happens, the system will come down. There's no way to stop the system collapsing. And so what I say over and over again, there's a spiritual solution, that is, come in the form of the heartfulness meditation, which deepens people's connection to God and the divine. And through their internal process, through the transmission and the cleaning off of their poor character qualities, and, aspiring to be better people and connecting to God and bringing God into your personal decision making process and your moment-to-moment daily lives, then we could manifest a more natural and divine system that's based in divine law, based in our love and connection to God and our wanting to serve God and being more service-oriented and less pleasure and oriented and selfish and egotistical, less ego and more soul, right? Then our system would be a reflection of that. And so the old system would have to go and the new system would have to be manifested from our internal worlds. But the present system is being manifested from our internal world, so we're a part of it. It's like it's a blockchain, right? All of us are, helping to mine and create this system, just like in the blockchain, and manifest it. And so when you look at the system and say your leaders are corrupt, well, that's coming from inside of all of us, that we are generating corrupt leaders, and we've, gone down this criminal and corrupt path, and we are going away from our soul's path and the person, the being that God is hoping that we become someday. And so, there's this heartfulness meditation that's supposed to, help people reclaim all these things, if they do it in the right way. Everything is created from the inside out, so by creating better people on the inside, helping people to be better on the inside and connected to God in a deeper way on the inside, then we can manifest a better system. And so that's a long-term solution, but it, involves all of us changing and adapting and going away from what the system has helped us make ourselves into. The system has encouraged us to be selfish, entitled, and weak and all these things. And so if you think you're waking up and everyone else has to change but you, then you're not even scratching the surface of this thing. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramano, definitely pouring from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.